Let's look at pronouncing words in English. There's going to be some words that you just find easy to pronounce, some that are more moderate, maybe they give you a little difficulty, and then some that are just truly difficult to pronounce. This looks pretty straightforward, like just a linear progression of easy to difficult in terms of pronunciation. But what I want to tell you today is that there are some gaps in this line. It's not a direct line from easy to difficult. Let me show you what I mean. We have some words that are simply easy to pronounce, but there are some words that you think are easy that are actually difficult. What do I mean by that? I'm going to give you some examples in a moment. And then there's also some words that you think are difficult, but they're actually easy once you have information. So these two categories of words, supposedly easy words that are actually difficult and difficult words that are actually easy, are the areas where you can make a lot of progress in a short time with some information. So let me show you what I mean. Let's look at something that you think is easy, but may actually be difficult. So the first example I want to give you is a word that is, on the surface, it looks pretty easy. Let's walk you through. So say this word. Go ahead and say it out loud. And then I want you to say this word out loud. So this word, say. This word, says. Nope. It actually sounds like says. So many people, when they're speaking American English, will mispronounce this supposedly easy word because of this word say. The word say follows the rules. Letters AI say the A sound, but the word says is a rule breaker for English pronunciation and spelling. This vowel, these letters AY in says, actually say the vowel, and letter S says the Z sound. And so there's a couple of different ways that this can go wrong, and it's really a very straightforward, simple word once you know and you can picture it as says. That's not necessarily hard to say. It's just that your brain is telling you something else, and you might not even have been noticing or hearing that as people are speaking, they're saying says. It says, he says, she says. Your brain is probably hearing it also like this word because of the way it's spelled and what you're visualizing. So this is an example of a word that you thought was easy, but actually is difficult. And there are many words like this. The way they're spelled makes them look straightforward, but they don't really match the spelling. And so the difficulty is you may be saying them incorrectly because of the spelling. Now let's look at some words or some examples of words that you might think are difficult, but that are actually fairly easy to say. And again, what do I mean by that? Let's walk you through an exercise to help you understand what category of words this is. So I want you to say, with no visuals, I want you to say this sound after me. Say wah, wah. So I guess I can give you some visuals. I'll help you cheat. So think of this. Say wah. Now say this. Ak. Ak. Were you able to say wah and ak fairly easily? These aren't real words, but they are real combinations of sounds. Now, when we put it together, put these two together. Say walk. Walk. You just now correctly pronounced the word walk. But if I showed you this word first, you might struggle to pronounce it correctly. You might be thinking, not understanding what the letters AL say in this word, that the L is silent. This word walk just has the W, A, and K sounds. Walk. It's pronounced the same as this word walk. So I take a walk and I cook in a wok. Once you know that information, none of these sounds are particularly hard for you to say, typically. Some people sometimes struggle with the W sound because of W versus V. So it's not always 100% straightforward, but basically this is a word that you might have thought was difficult and is actually fairly easy. So again, the way the word is spelled, the combinations of sounds, in this case, making something easy just takes information. So when I'm struggling with pronunciation, it's really helpful to know, why is a word difficult for me to say? Of course, there are words that are difficult to say just because they're difficult. They're difficult for native speakers as well. So an example might be a word like rural. The spelling is somewhat straightforward here, but doing the rural, those R's and L's together, is challenging. And so for a word that's difficult to say, that looks difficult and is difficult, what's really helpful there is to have the information about the sounds, how to break it down, how to practice to correct them, and to get that motor patterning to make it easier. And I have a lot of videos about words that are difficult to say for everyone, including native speakers. And then words that are difficult, that appear difficult but are actually easy, again, what you need there is information, a way to visualize it, understand what the sounds are supposed to be in that word so that you can say them correctly. Then for words that are appear easy, you think they're easy, but they're actually difficult, what's the trouble is here that you don't realize about these words. So this is, again, words like says, or said, or women, where the way the word is spelled is making you make a pronunciation error because you're not hearing it and realizing what the actual pronunciation is for that. So again, in this case, on those words, it's really about having the information to help that easy word actually be easier rather than mispronouncing it or having it incorrect. So I have strategies for everywhere along this continuum, and I'll be producing a video soon that shows you great examples of these kinds of words for words that are appear easy but are actually difficult, like said and women. For words that are moderately difficult, for example, a word like singer or order, where they have some challenges in the way they sound. Then other examples of words that are actually easy once you know. We walked through the word walk. I would say also literally is a good example of that many people struggle to pronounce literally, but if you have the correct information and the way to practice on this word, it can become quite easy rather than difficult. Or a word like choir, where the spelling is very confusing. And then, of course, words like rural, where they're actually quite difficult. So I'll be covering those words and more, as well as strategies and an analysis of why words are easy versus difficult, because oftentimes, if we try to take every single word that we find difficult to pronounce, or every single word that's in the moderate or easy categories in English, it's an overwhelming, daunting task. Instead, if we have a framework for looking at what strategies do I need to use based on why this word is difficult, it becomes much easier to change not only individual words, but your speech patterns in general. Improving your pronunciation overall with American English has to do with having the correct information, understanding the underlying rules, patterns, and systems of spelling and pronunciation in English. And that's what we cover here on the channel. And on my website, speechmodification.com, I have many resources for you there. So I'll suggest go to the description of this video and click on the links. You can find the free downloads I have for you that give you information about this, as well as I'll be covering in more detail in our upcoming video how to use this kind of analysis for your own speech, your own words that you struggle with, and how to use my resources like my Sounds of English course and my American Accent 6-week course to help you improve that. Okay, so thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here this Saturday morning. Let me know what you think about those words. I am curious to hear if you think the word walk is difficult, if that fell in the category of a difficult word that is now easy for you, or if it fell in the category of a word that you thought was easy, but maybe you were actually mispronouncing because of how it's spelled. There is some crossover between those two categories. And I do analyze which words get requested in comments or that you bring up here in live class, and it tells me what is happening and why those words are difficult, which I feel is really essential in not just memorizing every single word, but more understanding why something is hard. Okay, so you can ask questions about this topic, about fluent speaking, whatever will help you to feel more confident when speaking English and improve your English. That's what this class is for. Feel free to leave your questions in a comment if you're watching later on. If you're not here with us live, I do go through those comments and answer questions and get back to you with resources from the channel and from our website. Okay, so welcome everyone. Nice to see you. We have a question or a comment about words with B and V and saying above all, and that's difficult. Okay, so I would say your example of how to pronounce above all is an example of something that is difficult and that some information will help. Also, because as you mentioned, having challenges with B and V, you know the reason why this is difficult for you. And so doing some fundamental work on the B versus V sound is going to be very helpful when it comes to tackling a phrase that has a combination of those two. So just briefly, let's talk about B and V in case some of the fundamental information is missing for you there, or just a review of that might be helpful here. So when we're talking about the B sound, I have to put my lips together and stop the air completely and then burst it out. So this is a sound that can continue. When I say, for example, B, I can't hold the B sound because it's totally closed off and releasing. It's called a stop or a plosive sound. Versus when I say V, I can actually hold that V sound because it's a continuant sound. And to make the V sound, what I'm doing is restricting where the air can flow. And so my upper teeth and lower lip make the V sound, and I should feel vibration here. One thing that can be helpful for that is making the sound that letter F makes, the F sound. So if you say, for example, fee, the mouth position for the F and the V is exactly the same. It's just that my voice is on and there's vibration here for the V sound. So try saying fee and then turn your voice on, V, V, V. So I can feel vibration in my lip and teeth are touching, but my upper lip is not involved at all. And for Spanish speakers, these two sounds are not distinct like that. There's more of a V, that maybe the lips are closed, the sound can continue a little bit. So there's an in-between placement there. And in English, these two are very distinct from each other. Okay, so knowing that, when I'm saying something like above all, I have to do my B and V in short succession. And what I would suggest is, especially in a phrase, above can be made a little bit easier by breaking down the syllables. So it's going to be above all. Instead of thinking of above as one syllable, I'm going to just make my V link to my next vowel. And so I'm going to say above all. It sounds the same, but then now I have B and V as two separate syllables, ba-vol, and it might be easier for me to make those in succession instead of thinking about trying to say bov. Bov is going to be harder for me than ba-vol. So yes, as you can see, we have the schwa, unstressed schwa, and the stressed schwa in above, and the ah vowel like in all in the word all, above all. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, and it's a great example of this is difficult for you because of the sounds in it and the combination of sounds. Maybe also a little bit because of the spelling, because for some people, seeing that A and that O, it's hard to recognize that they're both the same sound. They both sound like and so for correcting this, practicing, making sure that you're making the fundamental sounds correctly and separately from each other, and then slowly bringing that into this phrase will be helpful for you. Thank you for that request and for that information, and I hope that helps you with above all. Okay. We have a question about the word witnesses and werewolf. So let's break down how to pronounce witnesses. So first we have in witness, we have first syllable stress. Letter I says the I sound. And I don't release this T. So I don't say witness, but rather wit. I stop the tongue for the T, and then I go right into the N sound. Witness. And then this second syllable is unstressed. So I could think of it as an F, like witness, but it's probably more likely to be an I, witness, or schwa, because it's unstressed. And then when we add the plural, witnesses, letters ES here at the end, just add another reduced vowel, I sound with a Z sound. So I would write that as witnesses. So this is also a plural noun or the verb. She witnesses the events happening every day. Okay, and then your other question was werewolf. Yeah, so werewolf is kind of interesting because it has the spelling of the word were, but the sounds of the word where. And these can be challenging for people, going back to our analysis of why something is difficult, because they're both spelled with E-R-E, but in this word were, it sounds like and in this word where, it sounds like air. And then, of course, we have something like, for example, here, it'll sound like ear. So you need the information to know how to pronounce these, and the spelling is not going to really help you. But in the word werewolf, even though it's spelled like were with the sound, it's pronounced like where with the air sound. And then wolf is not necessarily an easy sound word for people to pronounce either, because letters O-L say ol, like in pull or wool. So if I think about the word wool or pull, that visualization might help me with wolf. I would write werewolf like where with the air diphthong, and then wool, wolf. You can also think about the word wood, if that helps you. Wolf, wolf. We don't make a strong L there, not wolf with a strong L, but it is there. Wool, ol, wolf, wolf. Yeah, okay. So werewolf, not something we have to say every single day, but a good example of a challenging word because of needing information, and also for some people combining these ol sounds, that dark L, the R, the air diphthong, may be difficult as well. Thank you for that request, and thank you for being here today. Nice to see you. Okay. We have a question about alumni, how to pronounce it, whether alumni is alum with a y sound. Let's just break down how to pronounce alumni for you. So alumni. We have stress on the lum syllable, which means letter A is going to be the unstressed schwa. It sounds like lum. And then we have the stressed schwa in the center, lum. And then, excuse me, the ni, the I does say the I diphthong here. So alumni, like in night. Alumni. Yeah, so there isn't really a y sound in alumni. So I hope this breaks it down for you, helps you understand how to pronounce alumni. Yeah, very good. Good word. Okay, and thank you so much for being a channel member. It's nice to see you here, and I appreciate your support. Okay, we have a question about whether we pronounce those, the word those, with an S sound or a Z sound, or if it's interchangeable. So the word those has the Z sound. These and those both have the Z sound. The word this has the S sound. And so it's not interchangeable, because if I used the S sound here, those, You could hear that that would be a strong S sound. But one thing that happens when there's a Z at the ends of words, so even though it's marked in the dictionary with a Z, it will be a weak Z. So if I say zoo or zebra, zzz, I have a really strong voicing there. You can clearly hear the Z. Z's at the end are called weak Z's, and they sound a little bit like an S. So when I say, if I just said, I need those, those, you can hear there's a little bit of kind of S at the finish of what I'm saying, but it's not a strong S, not I need those. If you can strongly hear noisy air, then it's an S sound and it would be incorrect. If you hear a little bit of weak air, those, my Z starts with voicing and then kind of ends weakly with an S, then that's the correct way to say it. And especially if I'm saying put those in or those are, then I'm really going to hear that Z more as a strong Z again. It's going to sound like those in. Put those in the drawer. Put those in the car. Those are in the kitchen. Those are mine. So you're really going to hear that Z jumping onto the next word, and it's going to become a strong Z again. So always a Z. Sometimes it's weak, sometimes it's strong, but it is voiced, and you don't want a strong S, no S sound for words ending with Z sound. Great question. Those and these, this, they're very common everyday words. Really important to be able to say them accurately and not have an accent error pattern on those. Okay, great. We have a question about a name from Cars 2, Allinol. I'm gonna guess. I have to lean in to see your name. So you're saying Allinol. I'm not familiar with the name personally, so this is a guess, but I would say, maybe it's all in all. Maybe it's kind of a play on words from all in all. So if it were just a name, I would say Allinol, but because it has all spelling, they probably say it as all in all. That's something I can look up for you and check in the movie, but names are very specific, and that's not an actual real name. It was made up for that movie, I'm sure, probably because of all in all. Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. If you're just joining us, feel free to leave questions about pronunciation, fluent speaking, linking, reductions, whatever is going to be helpful for you in the chat, or you can also leave a comment and I'll get back to you later with answers. We have a question or comment about D in the middle of words. The whether or not is there shadow vowel in the word Midwest. So I would say when we have D in the middle of words followed by a consonant sound, like in Midwest, this I'll just write it as the adjective. If it was the noun, it would be capitalized. Midwest, Midwest culture. We use an unreleased D there. So I don't want mid to west, because that's just going to add a syllable and it's going to sound unnatural. We would just say Midwest. That D is unreleased. There shouldn't really be a shadow there. That's probably, if your app is telling you it should sound like Midwest, it's probably because for some people, if they try to leave the D out, it might just sound too much like Midwest, and we don't want that. We don't want to just leave the D out. That difference would be Midwest, my vowel just keeps going, versus Midwest, like you mentioned, using an unreleased D, stopping the air, and then restarting for the W of West is how we would actually do that. Midwest. And then the app may be just overcorrecting because it can't register whether or not that stop occurs, and so it's hearing it as this, even if you're not saying this. Yes. So when D is in the middle of words, if it's followed by a consonant like Midwest, Midtown, it's going to be unreleased. If it's in the middle and it's followed by a vowel or syllabic L, for example, model, model, then it's going to be a flap sound. Middle, model, we use a flap, followed by a consonant sound, we use an unreleased D. And then if it's stressed on the D, we would use a released D, like I can't think of something that's stressed on the D in the middle. But it's the same as T. Like if I say, for example, hotel, that's stressed on the T, then I use an actual full release T, tell, hotel. T also in the middle is going to be flapped, and then followed by consonant in the middle is going to be an unreleased T. So the D's and T's follow the same rules and patterns for in the middle of words. Yeah, great question. Thank you. And nice to see you here on Dead Heart. Okay. We have a comment about mispronouncing think, things, and really. Okay, so these are pretty common words, important to be able to say correctly. In the word think, we have the voiceless TH sound, the I, the NG sound, and the K. So let's break down how to pronounce think. It's one syllable. It has the ing combination, so it's an I vowel, like in it, but it'll be kind of higher and it sounds a little closer to E in ing, because my NG sound, lifted tongue in the back will lift that vowel a little. But I don't want to go all the way to ing. I don't want an E sound, not think, but think. So I would practice with saying the word thing first and then adding your K. That's one way to practice. If you're having difficulty with the TH sound, just exaggerate the TH a little bit, put your tongue between your teeth and blow air. Think. And I think knowing, in this case, that you're doing an NG sound there before the K. If you were trying to say think, you can hear that doesn't sound the same, right? Thin, my tongue is lifting in the front. Thing, think, it's lifting in the back. Unfortunately, it's just about mastering each of those sounds and putting them together in this word. There's no other trick to learn to pronounce that correctly. And then you're also asking about things. So things is just going to have the Z sound after thing, things. And again, it's going to be a weak Z there, although if I'm linking, things are going well, I'll be able to say that Z with a little bit more voicing. You might find that that's easier as well because you can think about it like things are, rather than first trying to just do things. The z might be a difficult combination for you. If you're breaking it kind of into two words, things are, you might find that easier. And then for the word really, there's a couple different ways we say it. If it's stressed, we might use a full ely, like really. But much of the time we actually say it more like really. I'm really busy. It's really nice. She's really pretty. We use more of an I sound here in the shortened version and the E sound here in the stressed or longer version. It's okay to say really, but you'll probably notice and hear around you that many native speakers just say really rather than really. And it's probably easier, especially we don't want really. When we say the word real, we do almost have two syllables, real, because we have vowel to vowel linking between that front E and that sound before that L, real. But really is more difficult and kind of sounds too stretched out for most cases because it's not usually the stressed word. Then we kind of reduce just to really. No vowel to vowel linking required there. Okay, yes, definitely challenging words. I do have videos for all of those words here on the channel. So if you leave me a comment after class or check back with the description after class, I'll probably put some links there for you where you can get a few more details and tips for those words. Thank you for being here, and I hope that helped you with those words. Okay, we have a question about pronouncing psychotherapist. So let's break down how to pronounce psychotherapist. So we have psychotherapist, 5 syllables in psychotherapist. We have stress on the first syllable of psy and then the syllable ther, psychotherapist. Main stress is going to be on the ther syllable. Letters ER in therapist say the air diphthong. Letter A says the and then we have an I sound at the end. So I would write that like therapist. And then for psycho, the P is silent. We have secondary stress. We start on this S sound, and then letter Y says the I, like in my, or sight. So we have the I diphthong. Letters CH say the K sound, and then we have an O. So it'd be like psycho. Psychotherapist. She's been studying to become a psychotherapist. The psychotherapist helped resolve the issues for the patient. Yeah, okay, good word. Again, I would say this is one that's not so difficult to pronounce once you have the information about the sounds. The spelling is confusing because it's not typical for English. And we do have the TH, the ther combination, which is a little bit difficult for some people because TH and R and air diphthongs can be difficult to pronounce. Okay, wonderful. Let's take a few more of your questions. We have a question about yeah, okay, good. Thank you for following up, Undead Heart. She's letting us know a few words that do say the true D in the middle, like reduce. So it's stressed on that D syllable, so it does do a true D. Reduce or conduct. So we have the verb to conduct is stressed on duct. So in that case, the D in conduct is the same as the D in duct, where I can actually stop the air and release it, versus in a word like model that we were talking about earlier, the D is a flap. Very good. Thank you for checking into that. I couldn't come up with anything off the top of my head. Okay. Question about how to pronounce water. So this, I would say, falls into the category of a word that's maybe moderate to difficult. Many people ask about it. And I think it's one that once you have an understanding of the sounds, the main challenge is going from this T to the and this T is a flap in this word. So one thing I will do is write it like water, or water, so that you recognize that the T is just like how we say D in the middle of words that's flapped. We have first syllable stress, and the letter A says an ah vowel, water. It may be a little bit rounded. It doesn't go all the way to water. Well, it can for some people. So the vowel is a little bit flexible. It's between an ah and an ah. Either one will do. And then we have a flap T and then the sound. So I would say, like I said, the der part is what's most difficult for people. I don't want a strong D, not der, not wader. That'd be too strong. So for the flap, my tongue just lightly taps up in the front and then comes right back down with my voice on. Der, water. What I would suggest is practice that in a word that doesn't have the ER first. So do something like waiting. And you can think of it as this word waiting. For most people, when they see a D in the middle, they're not saying wading. They're not saying a strong D. But it's easier for them to think of it as a light D, waiting. And that's what, these two are the same. That's what we say here. So that's how I would work on the flap. Get the flap in the middle first. Then add the flap plus the R, like water, matter, batter, etc. You can think about if a word like matter is easy for you to say. That's the same as this matter. And then you can switch to water. You're going to just have a different ah. This is the ah vowel. Water. Yeah, but the der is not always easy. One other suggestion I have is to be able to make that flap and then an Make your first, and then just lift the front of the tongue up gently. When I say take or do, my tongue is all the way in the front behind my teeth. Do, take, talk, because I can prioritize that D or T. When I'm saying water, the has to get the priority. The is more important, and the placement and shape for the and so my D just gets pulled back a little bit instead of being way forward. Water. That's too much work to go back and forth. I just have the der. I just lift the tip of my tongue from the position. So building from the back, der, water might be helpful for you as well. I do have a few videos on water here on the channel. If you need more detail than that, you can check those out after class, and hopefully that will help you with that important everyday word, water. I'll have a drink of water to celebrate your word. Okay, we have a question about words like fountain and mountain. Yeah, another interesting combination when we have the NT followed by another N. So mountain, fountain. I'm saying them right now with this T, and that's an option. You can say mountain, mountain. That sounds like mound, or ow, ountain. Letters A-I-N just say the I sound. But for many native speakers, when we have NT in the middle, we leave that T off. We say it more like mountain, mountain. And it's not the same as when I'm saying something like interview or internet, and I just say interview, internet, and I leave the T off entirely. When I say mountain, what I'm doing there is an unreleased T, because what I'm doing here is a syllabic N. So basically what I mean by that is, for mountain, you either need a true T, mountain, and then you're doing some vowel before the N, or you're eliminating this vowel entirely, which means the T acts like it did in when there's a consonant following, because it's just going right to the N sound. So that sounds like mount. I'm doing the ow, and then my N is very short. I'm stopping for the T, but I'm not releasing it. Mount, mount, and then I'm just doing another sound, which is a syllabic N. It's no vowel, just so it's kind of basically two N's in a row with an abrupt stop in between. Mountain, fountain, fountain. I think the pronunciation of this is changing and shifting, where younger generations might be saying more like mountain, mountain, or some different pronunciation there. I'm not sure exactly what it is. My generation, older, somewhat older people are going to most likely say mountain, mountain. But it is okay and normal to say mountain as well. Mountain, it's plenty clear. So you'll hear both from native speakers. And if mountain is easier, there's nothing wrong with using it. You're probably just noticing this mountain, fountain, and wondering what is going on there. And that's what it is. Thanks for bringing that up. And I do have a video about mountain, going into detail about that T and N combination. Nice to see you here. Thank you for your question. Okay. We have a question about how to pronounce foreigners. So for foreigners, let's break down how to pronounce foreigners. I would say it's difficult because of how it's spelled and because of the two R's in it. We have first syllable stress, and letters OR do say or in foreigners. So like the number 4. Letters EI just say the I sound, like in the word in. And the G is silent, foreign, foreign. So even though we have a word rain, this word rain, that sounds like rain. In this word, it's just rin. So you have to ignore, if you have that information in your head, you have to ignore that when you see foreign, foreigners. And then we have the and the letter S says the Z sound. So I would write it as foreigners. Break it down slowly. Foreigners, foreigners, foreigners. This in is so short. I do think sometimes people say almost foreigners. The in can be very reduced. You don't want to go all the way to just foreigners. That would be a little weird. But you can err in that direction rather than dragging it out. Foreigners. This is pretty short and reduced. Yeah, I hope that's helpful for you. That's a good word. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay. We have a question about whether or not new, let's see. So I'm not sure what you mean by rabbits. So we have rabbits and we have the word rabid. But as far as I know, I don't know what rabbits is. Is that another word name from Cars? It would probably just be like rabbits, but with a D sound. Rabbits. Yeah. So rabbit and rabid, just the T and D is the difference there. Yeah. Okay. And we have a question about how to pronounce whether new rhymes with view or is it pronounced like new. So in view. Yeah, so your question basically is, does new have a y sound like view? So if I were to rewrite view, you can see in the IPA, it has the oo has a y before it, view. So it's kind of like view with the y sound. In British English, they do say new. They have the y sound. In American English, we have dropped that yeah. It's called yod dropping, and we've dropped it before the N, the T, the Z, the D. So we don't say Tuesday, we say Tuesday. We don't say YouTube or duty, we just say duty, new. So in US English, just the N and the oo there in new. So I have a new video on YouTube on Tuesday, which I actually do. Yeah, same thing with, for example, do in American English, do, no yes on there, not due. Same thing for new. We just use the oo sound in all of those. View, museum, music, we do keep the y after certain consonant sounds. And I do have a video explaining which words do which. It's not super noticeable if you keep that in and you say new. It'll sound just a little bit more British. People will understand you just fine. So it's not super important for being understood, but it is an element of the American accent to have this yod dropping before these certain consonants or after these certain consonants with oo sounds. Good observation. Yeah, thank you for that question. Okay. We have a question about how to say entreaties. So let's break down how to pronounce entreaties. I'm thinking it's not a strong N, entreaties. It's going to sound more just almost like the N sound or in with a little I or eh vowel at the front. And then we have the tree is a stressed syllable. And then this T will be flapped, so it'll be more like an E, like a D sound. So various entreaties. Definitely a little bit challenging. I can see why you might have some difficulty because we have the true T here and the flapped T there, entreaties. And the N-E-N beginning as well. Okay, we have a question about how to say croissant in English. So British English, they're going to do croissant closer to the French. American English, sometimes we say croissant, which I'm sure some people are cringing to hear that, but it is the American English pronunciation. So that sounds like croissant. and that's the US English. French, of course, croissant, more of an "on." We don't hear the T sound there, and we have a nasalized vowel and a different vowel in the beginning. American English, croissant. I would say some US speakers are starting to use more of a French pronunciation there, but that's not too widespread just yet. Okay, and let's see. Dark versus light L, we'll come back to that, and yeah, I'm happy to cover that if there's time at the end. And let's see, how is a flap T in greater different from the flap D in what if? I feel that the tongue flap behind the ridge to quickly transition to the R. So greater, as I was saying before when we were talking about flap T plus R, der, you may have to adjust where the tongue is going for that flap to accommodate the versus what if. In something like what if, as I flap there, what if. Nothing about those vowels that are before and after the flap make me have to change my position so I can flap right behind my teeth. What if I said greater? Whereas the g and the and this all pull my tongue back into that tight position here, and so my flap T is going to possibly happen a little further back on the palate in greater. Yeah, that's a good observation, and you might find this one to be more difficult than here. The good news is if you can get your flap here, eventually you'll be able to get it in that context with the R's as well. Okay, we have a question about when T is pronounced as a CH. So yeah, architecture. So in TURE, architecture, it is always pronounced as a CH. So if you have a T at the end like structure, architecture, you're going to have that ch sound. But when you have TR in words like in tree or tube in American English, we don't typically use the CH there. Now there are some dialects of speakers of US English who will say more like tree here rather than tree. So it'll be okay if you use that there, but I would say in this case, when the T is at the start, US speakers are really never going to say tube. They may say tree a little bit, tree. It's just because the t sounds pretty similar to the ch but I don't recommend it because I would say for standard US English, it is just a t and an here. In structure, we do have a CH sound there. So I would say when it's a letter T plus an sound, you can expect the ch. And if you look in the dictionary, you'll see this symbol, or depending on what symbols they use, you'll see the CH for a word. So I'll think more about the patterns of where these happen. I do have some videos talking about doing TR blends, and I don't typically recommend saying the CHR. Some English teachers will tell you to do this, and that may be because they feel like you can't master the tr sound or the tr sound, and that it's easier to do tr because the tongue is back. But it sounds different. It is a different sound, and not most speakers use this, so I would go with this for the TR sounds. So no CH when there's a TR or TU, and yes CH when there's a CTU, URE in structure or architecture. Yeah, great question and good observation, and thank you for being here. Okay, we have a question about the word jewelry. So this is one that's debated by different native speakers, have different pronunciations for it. It's one that's a little bit in the difficult for some speakers because of the oolry, the L and R in closeness. I like to pronounce it as jewelry. So thinking about that, just like jewelry, because jewel, if I go slowly, I'll have ooh, a little bit of the ooh sound connecting to the ul sound with vowel to vowel linking, jewel. If I'm just saying jewel, I'm more likely to hear that w a little bit. But in jewelry, because it's 2 syllables, this jewel syllable is going to be fairly short. So I don't worry too much about jewelry, rather more jewelry. It was the jewelry store. She liked to wear inexpensive jewelry. Yeah, I do have a video talking about jewelry and breaking it down for you here on the channel, so you can get some more details there if you need them. Thanks for bringing that up. That's definitely a challenging word for people. Okay, we have a question about the words orange and origin. So let's break down orange and origin for you. In orange, people will sometimes say it as 1 syllable rather than orange. They'll just say orange. You can do it either way. Just don't drag out the 2 syllables if you use to. It's stressed on that first syllable, orange. And so I would say this sound, the schwa in the middle, orange, is a little bit optional. So you can say it kind of like orange, with the j sound at the end. You can spell that however you want. Or orange, with a little bit of an in here. Orange. Versus origin, we don't drop that middle, the sound after the R, and it's 3 syllables. So you have first syllable stress again. Origin. Where you'll have more reduction there is in the gin syllable, almost no vowel there. So that sounds like origin. A little I sound there maybe, origin. So the origin of many oranges is Florida. Yeah, oranges. Yeah, so I just said oranges with 3 syllables. You can also do oranges. So it has the z sound, the is sound at the end if you make it plural. Yeah, good words. Thank you for that request. Okay, we'll take a few more questions and then we'll wrap up for today. It's nice to see so many of you here. Thanks for coming back week after week and for watching the videos in between, for your comments and requests. It helps me know what to create for you here on the channel and in my online courses on speechmodification.com. Okay. We have a question about struggling with flap T. It's not soft D or R, so try to sound like native speakers. So yeah, so it is, the flap sound is the same as the R sound in some languages. So if you speak a language where the R's are rolled in the front, like and if you do a word like pero, or Iran, where there's just like one light roll of a rolled R, then that can be helpful when you're trying to do the flap T and the flap D, because the flap is just one sound. These are no different from each other. It's just that we don't use it for R in English. We just use it for T and D. So for some speakers, just thinking of it as an R gets them the correct sound. But basically, you want to just try to keep that tongue tapping up once, but not building up pressure. So to feel the difference, when you say the word to or do, you should feel that your tongue is really pressing there and there's no air escaping, and then it bursts out to, versus water, waiting. I'm lifting up, my voice is on, but it's just very light. There's no pressure buildup. One thing to do is try saying, for example, say this, way, ding. When I say ding, I'm strongly stopping the air and bursting it out. And then say waiting, waiting. What you should feel is that it's not wading. There's no stop. The flow of air keeps going. Waiting, waiting. So for me, this wouldn't help to see it with an R. Waiting, waiting. But for some speakers where the R is flapped in the middle like that, visualizing it that way might be helpful for you. So you know best, but like I said, I think sometimes if you can find somewhere where you are using a flap and then retrain your brain to use that same sound. So I notice that some people, if they're saying something like, I gotta, or I got a friend, I need to get an idea, that when they're linking those, it's easy for them to flap that because they never really used or spelled or saw gotta or getta. They heard it from native speakers, and so they're naturally using a flap. Wherever you can find in your speech that you're already using a flap, you can then try to train. If I can say getta and I use a flap, then I can try to change that into getting, move from getting or getting to getting from getta, getting. That would be one example of kind of shaping that flap into new places from a place that you can already do it. If you can't do it anywhere, then practicing with T and D and just trying to keep it really light, almost kind of singing it, getting, keeping it from blocking the air too much, keeping that voice going, and not letting any airflow get blocked. Okay, welcome. We have a question. Welcome from Chile. We have a question about the word singing. Yeah, this is a difficult one. I would say I would put this in the moderate category, kind of in the middle, where it might seem easy to some people, seem hard to others. What's happening here is that we have to go from the ing sound to another ing sound. And so for many people, when they're trying to do singing, they end up with singing, because it's hard for them to go from into a vowel without the g sound sneaking in. And we don't have any g in sing or singing or singer. And so basically trying to just do the ng sound, inger, ing. My tongue is up and back, and I just let it drop gently with my voice still going, and then bring it back up. The difference when I make a g sound is that, again, I would be stopping the air fully, just like the flap versus the D. The ng versus the ng is about if the air gets blocked or not. So I need to keep my voice going, the air going, ing, and gently leave my tongue down and bring it back up. Sing, singing, singing, sing it, singer. My video from this past Tuesday is all about linking the NG sounds, especially in words like doing it, going on, working on. Gives you a lot of practice for that. And then it also, if you go to that video and that's too difficult for you, you can backtrack and look up my video for singing, singer here on the channel, where I break down some details about how to get that NG to link to the vowel without having that extra sound. Definitely challenging for a lot of people, so thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Question about grammar, why do Americans say there is when referring to plural things? So there is some blah, blah, blah. I think it's just a grammar mistake that's become less of a mistake because of a wide use. I mean, language changes over time through use. Sometimes people will say there are, and sometimes they use there is instead of there are. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why that phenomenon has happened, but it has. All right, we have a question about foreman. So let's do foreman and foremen, singular and plural. So let's break down how to pronounce foreman. We have letters F-O-R-E say the same as the number 4 or the And so we have the first syllable stress with the or diphthong, and then the foreman, the foreman, the foreman. I think we don't use a clear a here, not the foreman, but the foreman, mun. We're going to use a schwa there instead. So it's just like in a word like human, where we're no longer saying a, the man syllable becomes men because it's unstressed. So I need to check in with the foreman. And there are several foremen, same pronunciation. So you need the context to tell you whether it's singular or plural. So it's going to sound like foremen. Very little vowel there between the m and the n. The factory foreman. The factory had 10 foremen. Kind of strange that the singular and plural have different spelling but same pronunciation. Very good. Okay. We have a question about clear versus tearing. So for clear, we have the ear diphthong. So that's a high front vowel, ear sliding. It's clear to me now. And then for this word, depending on which usage you're using, we have tearing, like same as in clear. So I was tearing up when I heard the news. And then we also have tearing with the air diphthong, as in tearing the paper or tearing myself away. So two different spellings, but two different meanings. So tearing, producing tears, tearing as in to tear. Different pronunciation there. So depending on which one you're looking at, there's a different, same spelling, but different pronunciation, different meaning. Okay. Yes, so we have a question about the rule of three. When there's three consonants in a row, that we sometimes skip a consonant. That's true. So for example, if I had, we were just talking about this a couple weeks ago. I have to try to think of some examples. For example, like with NTS, so I have 50 cents. We don't say cents. It ends up being kind of the same as just an NS sound. I sense that you have several cents. Slight difference there in sense is that I might have a shorter N sound, sense, and a little bit of stopping versus in sense. No, they actually sound the same, don't they? So they both just have the N and the sounds at the end. So there are quite a few examples of three consonants in a row where we don't do all three. There are some times, though, when we do, so it's not a universal rule. You have to kind of look up individual words in the dictionary to be sure. Okay, and then we had a question about this versus these. I have a recent video about this. I think this is a really important distinction to make because the trouble is that for a lot of people, the difference between the I vowel in this and the E vowel in these, you're not making enough of a difference, and you might do a vowel sound that's a little in between those two, like this, and you don't want that because this goes with singular, like this is it, and these goes with plural, like these 3 green teas. So this one way I recommend practicing is using this is it, this is his, using words that have the I vowel together to get this, and words that have the E vowel to get the these. So you have the high front E, very tense, tongue is high. The E vowel is probably in your native language, whereas the I vowel with the tongue a little lower and more lax is probably not in your native language. These also has the Z sound at the end, whereas this has the S sound at the end. So again, you can do these are to feel that voicing of the z, and this is, you can hear it's a strong S, and here's a weak Z. Yeah, so important distinction and a couple of different ways to practice those. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today, for the great questions. If I didn't get to all of your questions, my apologies. Please do leave your question in a comment, and I'll come back after and give you some resources and answers. And we'll have live class again next week, so come back again then. On Tuesday, we'll be debuting a new video for you, talking about difficult versus easy sounds and giving you some more analysis of how to correct your pronunciation easily and naturally with less effort. Do check out the resources on speechmodification.com, especially my Sounds of English course, which breaks down all of the English sounds, and my American Accent 6-week course, which will give you a lot of help to build up the patterns you need to improve your English pronunciation and American accent. Thanks for being a part of the channel, for commenting, liking. Thanks so much for those of you who have subscribed and joined as channel members. I couldn't do it without you, and I'm doing it for you, enjoying your company here on Saturdays. Looking forward to seeing you next week and in our next video on Tuesday. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.